halfway through the trading session. I'm Reema Tendulkar, with me Rupee Upadhyay, and Bulls have staged a comeback.
Absolutely.
Sensex is higher by 700 points. The Nifty's gained more than about 200 points as the rupee has strengthened and crude prices have eased. So that combination is playing out very well. We've got some important macro data coming out. The inflation will come out. The CPI inflation will be out post-market hours. But ahead of that, the setup is looking good. And after seeing a near 5% cut last week, this week at least, as we track, the Nifty could go home with gains of close to about 1.5%, with the mid-caps rallying close to about 2.5% so far this week. Hi.
Well, hi, Reema. I guess Bulls finally decided that enough is enough because they've given up 3 Fridays to the Bears in a row. It seems, at least for now, this market's holding on to all of those gains. It's quite steady and there's widespread participation. That's the other good news. Almost all facets of the market, all parts of the market are moving higher. Just 2 stocks on the Nifty that are negative. And they're from the tech space because there's some profit taking, TCS being one of them. But other than that, everything is right now in the green on the mother index. That's the story so far. We've got a lot of ground to cover. Let's get started.
One of the big factors aiding the recovery in the stock market has been the strength in rupee. Lata joins in to tell us more about that particular story. Lata, you've been saying since morning that at least for the near term, you believe the rupee has put in a bottom.
The chart is telling us that a week's losses have been wiped out. The rupee is back to last Friday highs. Remember, the low it saw was 74.48 yesterday. It travelled a distance of 73.60 today at its height. And the cause clearly is the mother of all causes, inflation in the United States. The CPI number coming in a good 40 basis below the August levels. August CPI was 2.7% and the September CPI was 2.3%. That led to a fall in US bond yields. Of course, there were other reasons that the yields fell, with so many people seeking safe haven. But that led to the big dollar strength receding. Now, at one point in time earlier today, it was even at 94.95 thereabouts. Remember, at its height on Monday, it had gone to well over 96. So dollar weakened, and therefore the rupee's victory or rupee stability is not only a rupee stability, it's emerging market currency story. Whether you looked at rupiah, won, Filipino peso, yuan, and the rupee, I can go on lira, rand as well. But Asian emerging market currencies are actually month to date in the green. That's the level of recovery that we have seen across, the emerging market basket. We don't know how long this will last, but it looks like the current bout of volatility is over. The extra, icing for India is the way in which crude has stumbled. Now at $80, we're more vulnerable than other emerging markets, other Asian markets, and hence we could harvest a little more gains from the way in which crude has fallen.
Okay, Lata, do stay on. We also have some more experts joining in to talk about this, whether this really marks the peak for the dollar index, and therefore is this respite in emerging market currencies? Is it something that we can actually hold on to? Koon Go of ANZ Research joins us on the phone line now. Koon, thanks so much for taking this call. That's really the question that emerging market participants, including us here in India, are really wondering. Whether for now you think the dollar index has put a bit of a peak, whether we can expect stability around 95, and what lies ahead for EM currencies like the rupee.
Yeah, good day to you. It certainly looks like the DXY has peaked and is set to potentially retreat further. If you look at the DXY, it's actually really just gone sideways over the last 3 to 4 months. But in terms of translating that into emerging markets, I would caution against reading too much into the DXY because there actually has been a decoupling between emerging market currencies and the DXY. While the DXY has went sideways for the last 3 to 4 months, as we all know, emerging market currencies continue to weaken quite substantially, including the Indian rupee. So yes,
we're not reading so much. No, Koon, we're not reading so much into just the DXY. It's just that the American CPI number came in lower than expected, and that's also pushed the yields lower. Crude is lower, so that's giving us some respite. Is this for real, is the question. Do you think that at 73 and having seen 74.48 and now strengthening, for instance, foreign investors, would they find India attractive at, say, 74 to $1 and 8% on 10-year yields?
Yeah, I think we've seen a little bit of a respite in Indian rupee, but I wouldn't want to declare victory at this stage because we have seen periods of respite before, but they proved to be temporary. I think at this point in time, certainly you can point to the indicators of lower U.S. yields, lower crude, and tapering off of the DXY. But fundamentally, crude, even at $80 a barrel, will still pose challenges for India's current account.
So you're not buying Indian bonds?
I think at this stage, look, you can have some near-term respite, but I don't think this necessarily means the pressure is over. I think, in my view, I think we still have a challenging period ahead still, not only in terms of the external position for India, which will still weaken even with Brent at $80 a barrel. And look, U.S. yields are still above 3%. Sure, it's fallen off from the high of 3.25, but it's still some challenging periods ahead. So, yes, respite near term. But as I said, I wouldn't expect this to be a total turn in the direction of the rupee just yet.
Okay. Ashutosh Khajuria, the Executive Director and CFO Federal Bank, is also with us. Do stay on, Koon. Mr. Khajuria, what's the sense you're getting? Are exporters coming in and selling, thinking that the highest they could have got is over?
Well, I partly agree with what Mr. Koon has now. It's already over, but technically, I think my feeling tells me that in case it closes close 350, and
Oh, we have you on a bad line, sir. We'll try and redial with Ashutosh Khajuria. Well, okay, Koon, just to wind up this conversation, I mean, I'll tell you in rupees crores, but I think it can be even $1 billion. This month in equities, we must have sold off about, what, 16,000 crores? And in bonds, foreigners have sold out maybe 8,000-9,000 crores. So together, it's about a little under $4 billion that foreigners have taken out of Indian assets, equities, and debt. No question of any positive number on any day, Kungo?
Look, you will have periods or days where there will be inflows. There's no doubt about that. But I think the main question you got to ask yourself is the flows going to be sustained and, more importantly, large enough to cover India's, just say the monthly import bill, which is about $3 billion a month. That's the real question you got to ask, because that is the sustained inflows that will really require the rupee to turn sentiment and turn its fortunes around. And given that we still have some headwinds still, I think it's quite challenging to expect to see sustained inflows of that amount.
But Koon, given all that you said, what does it mean in terms of levels? Can we at least expect that, this whole fear of 75 is going to be breached? At least that has been put to rest for now. What's the range?
Actually, the rupee has come off or recovered to the levels that you would expect based on technicals. I think we could well see a further recovery down to about the 73 level, but overall you can't rule out another retest of 74 or even 75 at this particular stage. I think you need a lot of things to go right for the rupee to really rally quite materially.
So this could just be a temporary respite, according to Koon. But we managed to reconnect with Ashutosh Khajuria of Federal Bank. Ashutosh, you were telling us earlier about how dealing rooms are approaching this little bit of an appreciation that we've seen in the rupee. Do you get the sense that we've put in a bottom?
Yeah, I partly agree with Mr. Koon. I think it could be a temporary relief, because as long as we have a huge CAD, there will always be a pressure on rupee, and it's not going to go off so early. But of course, with this depreciation, certainly I think there is going to be a push as far as exports are concerned, and therefore trade deficit may, reasonably come down or so. But that's something which would take time. So currently, I think it would be driven by what type of investment flows come in. So I think it would be, capital account flows which would be influencing rupee. But technically, if you see, if it closes before 73.50 today or on Monday, then I think for some time we can see the past number 74 plus to be the top. And then I think rupee can come back to its normal levels of around 72.50. That's what I see it at going forward.
Well, you'll have to say that RBI Governor Patel has the last laugh, at least in this round. He didn't panic with crude at 86. But you don't know. It's a Pyrrhic victory. We don't know how long it'll last, as both Kungo and Ashutosh Khajuria say we have just got some temporary peace. Ashutosh Khajuria, just wanted two numbers from you. What kind of an inflation number will keep the bond markets happy today? And what kind of a trade deficit number are you expecting? I think that should be out next week.
I think other than fuel, there is no pressure on CPI numbers. So I think the trend of it being lower than what the expectation had been would continue for another couple of months. But then I think the fuel will start getting built in. And that's where, you know, I think the projection of RBI for second half, it's going to tend towards that.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Ashutosh Khajuria and Kungo, for joining us. If we were to get, you know, a 16 point something as trade deficit for the month of September, the numbers should come next week, then we can extend this piece on the rupee. But if the trade deficit once again strikes 17 point something, then we are in big trouble. You know, we must start to show that the delta is getting lower because the rupee has depreciated, we are importing less and we are exporting more. In some ways, the deficit has to show a lower trend. That will be a slightly more lasting victory.
Oh, absolutely. We'll wait for those numbers because I'll give a signal that, okay, we've got this under control on the CAD front at least. Thank you, Lata, so much for the analysis as well. We'll take a quick break on that note.